I think we can all remember a few years ago when we were told that conventional books and bookstores were going to be going out of business because everything was going to migrate to e-readers. And to a large degree, it did. But there was also a plateau that was hit a couple of years ago where people chose that they actually preferred reading a book. I can tell you personally, I much prefer picking up a book with 400 pages than reading something because I'm in front of my computer, in front of my telephone all day. It's that much more difficult for me to engage with a book I want to read using an electronic medium. So, Chris, let me throw this question to you. In the sense of the fact that we are seeing a great amount of digitization, we still know that from a customer experience standpoint, there are people that are going to prefer to pick up the telephone and speak to a live agent or send a letter or send a fax and expect a letter or a fax in return. So how does the customer experience industry really take on board certainly the need to service people in a much more digital fashion, but also remember that there are individuals that might prefer a more traditional approach to how they interact with enterprises?
Yeah, my mom's certainly going to call, and she's not sending a text message.
Bingo.
But I also say, I talked last week, Shannon and I were at another event and introduced a concept that is counter to what I just said. I'm really thinking through the lens of Generation C. How many people are familiar with Generation C? So, not my idea, not taking credit for it, but I kind of like it. And it's kind of counterintuitive to what I just said. Generation C is all about the connected customer. And generally, a lot of the marketing strategies, the customer experience strategies that we engage with customers are the millennials. They want to engage this way. They want to be the mobile device. They're never going to call. The counter argument to that may not be true. And really thinking not through a lens of how you develop customer experience strategies by age bracket, Generation X, Generation C, put them in a box, define them, and come up with a strategy to engage. The connected customer is always about an attitude. And there can be someone that's an X, one of my kids' grandmother is on Facebook, FaceTime, and doesn't pick up the phone anymore. So if we branded her that she's only going to call, that would be a fatal mistake in terms of go-to-market and serving that customer. Generation C is all with the connecting customer and thoughts of how they engage, when they engage, and choices that it's an individual discussion. So think of the personalization or one-to-one marketing from 20 years ago, and really thinking through a customer experience strategy that's not branded by an age bracket, but really by an attitude or how they're engaging. And I think that's really something I picked up on a couple of months ago. It's not a new thought. It's out there. There's lots of blogs and history that is starting to come around that. And it's really thinking through then how do you deploy it. Second part of that is then thinking through something that you were talking about a minute ago, is really something called a unified customer experience strategy. Rather than omni-channel, multi-channel, which is kind of no lack of literature out there on that, is really thinking through conversations may start in one channel, a phone call. They may continue on a PC, a mobile device. They may be in a chat. They may be in a text message session. They may be in a social media engagement, having a conversation with the brand, and really thinking through customer experience strategies and deployment capabilities that can then manage that brand experience between that corporation and that consumer in a unified way. Being able to start a conversation one channel, put it away. Johnny's on the soccer field. Now he's playing again. I'm going to stop. I'm going to start watching my son, Johnny. I'm going to pay attention. I may come back. I may forget about that, but I'll pick it up on my laptop, my computer, or maybe on a different channel. Coming up with those strategies in a unified customer experience are two things that we're seeing a lot of our kind of strategic discussions that we're having on customers, then coming up with philosophies, how do you engage with customers with customer experience solutions against that.
No, that's a really good point. And that takes me to the next topic I wanted to go over with the four of you. One of the things that really strikes me is the fact that as the consumer's changing and the necessity to change the way that we interact with them, that's going to necessitate potentially a shift in terms of the type of recruit that we're bringing in to man the front lines. Now, Terry, I'd be curious from your standpoint, in terms of a shift towards more digitization in front office delivery and excellence in customer care, how does today's frontline agent or supervisor look differently relative to what it might have even been 5 years ago?
5 years ago, I'll go back 10 years ago, where we had people that didn't know how to spell DSL back in the day, right? Because it was a brand new topic, and when you fast forward that, and I'm speaking specifically in Canada, it is a younger generation. It's a generation, and they come to work for a company like ours because of the global opportunities that you have. 300,000 employees in 62 countries. That's my plug for us globally. But bottom line is, you look at these folks and they come in and they have exceptional capabilities from a technology side. And the comment was about keeping them, right? The attrition in the contact center space. And so, yeah, it's about compensation, but I also think it's about opportunity. And so this generation that we're seeing they're highly technically savvy. They can do multitask many things, and they're about the opportunity. They want to be about something that's bigger than them from this millennial generation, at least from our experience.
Beautiful. Any other comments from the panel?
Yeah, just pick
all
up.
three of you.
Pick up just on what's needed. I heard earlier discussions, kind of around the expectations at levels. When we first outsourced a bunch of our business, it was simpler than it was today, and a lot of it ended up offshore, India, and then we had a partnership between India and Jamaica. And as the business has gotten more complicated, I'll be honest, we've had problems in those two locations kind of keeping up with the level required. And we probably brought a third of the business back to Canada. So that's been a pretty big change for us over the last few years. And while it's more expensive to deal with the business in Canada, a lot of the stuff we're doing is the higher value transactions. So we try and funnel all the simple stuff. So your mom who calls to cancel her paper for a vacation because she's heading to Cuba for a week. Renewing, perfect. But those are simple transactions. Those are the kind of things that are easily handled, pretty much anywhere. But when you start getting into a more complex discussion about downloading the StarTouch app and why it doesn't work on my device, and someone has to kind of walk through them, we had problems making those types of transactions effective in India or Jamaica, for that matter. So a pretty big strategic change in how we viewed outsourcing as the product mix got more complicated.
So Shannon and then Chris.
Yeah, so similar to what Sandy said, we would absolutely have seen an increase in the complexity of the type of calls that we get, or interactions, chat, mobile, however the customer interacts with us. And so that has changed the attributes and skills that we're looking for in our people. And also allowed us to similar to what Terry said, is we are also reevaluating. So, our contact centers in general were pretty flat. Organizationalized, everybody on the front line was pretty much the same level, got paid very similarly. But now, because they need to be problem solvers, they need to be empathetic, they need to be tech savvy, we're having different levels, and there's more career opportunity for advancement, and we're lowering attrition that way.
Great. Chris?
Yeah, I'd only add a couple quick thoughts. Culture is really important. And it's really hard to describe culture in a digital world. Whether it be Scotiabank's bowling alley that's built in the facility, the digital lab, or creating an environment, how you engage, creating the culture. The way people engage is very much a emotional connection versus an intellectual connection. And the EQ and the hiring talent, creating the culture that fosters people to act and engage with the human element is really, really important. We talked to some of our customers that have really been trying to, how do you incubate this idea? Generally, the call centers are very script-based, asked, answered, FAQs that follow a methodology. When you move out to the digital world, when you're doing chat and interaction, two-way integrated text messaging, emoticons are there, slang's there, words mean different things, language is very, very different. Creating an environment to figure out how you're hiring profiles that can emotionally connect, just like you do on the phone with the empathy, but you're following a process, is very different. And we found the profiles of the agents, the leadership, the team leads are very different than a traditional call center type hiring profile. And it's been a pretty good learning to really try to hire, recruit, train, and test for that through the onboarding process.
Excellent.